I forgot we had a podcast. I've just been doing manly stuff, as always. Let me just hop into some proper clothing.
So, welcome to Mental Perspective. We are here in Season 2, first episode. Today, my guest is Jimmy Coolman. We've been friends for a long time. We've met during college times, even though we didn't study together. And there we go. So, yeah, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about myself. I'm Jimmy Coolman. I'm not really present in the internet. I don't have a Twitch stream. I just have a TikTok. And I'm a Donauschwabe, as some people may remember in the chat, as we already talked about those people. So I'm talking Swabian. And that's, I think, everything about me.
Beautiful. All right, yeah. So we talked about like what we could talk about today, and we came up with the topic of masculinity, since it has been like quite the avid topic in chat before. And I think an interesting perspective of that would be how our own perception changed. So maybe we just start with how did you how did you value masculinity, or what did that mean to you when you were a kid?
Well, I'd say I valued it pretty much. I'd say I had a lot of role models when I was a kid, like my grandpa or the Super Action Man. Like you maybe remember, Action Man, the greatest hero in your world was the claim of it. And I think as a kid, I've always been in contact with manliness, with the stereotypical man having a lot of muscles, like driving around with a Range Rover, firing guns and stuff. And I always, as a kid, enjoyed playing with Action Man, and therefore, I think as a kid, you always, I always had a role model, a manly role model, on which I could see what is defined as manly.
Mm-hmm. So how would you define that manliness? Like what values do you attach to it?
Guns and Range Rovers. No, just kidding. I don't know. Manliness is something which is defined by yourself and by society, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I define manliness as something which everybody. The definition of manliness differs from person to person. That's just what I wanted to say. And I think you can't just say that's manly or that's not manly. I mean, there are some things around the globe which are considered manly, like having big muscles and a nice-looking beard, like you and I do have. So you could say that's pretty manly, I guess.
The reason I ask this question is because I'm aware how hard it is to define it, right? So I think it helps if we first set down a definition, and specifically the definition we had back then, and then how our definition changed, because arguably we're not going to make a point for everyone on the globe. That is not our claim. We cannot do that. We can only talk about our own perspective, our own vision.
Sure, yeah.
So if I think of myself back then, I also did value being like super manly a lot. Like, I don't know, try to be absolutely fearless, be disciplined, I don't know, try all these things. And I feel like a lot of these values I learned through my grandparents.
Okay.
Like I remember vividly how, I don't know, I hurt myself in the first classes of school. And my grandma just was there and was like, yo, Native Americans don't cry. Which is a bit of a weird saying, thinking of it today. But it was a common German saying like 20 years ago. So don't judge that too hard. And basically always the message was, don't cry, be a man, be tough. Ignore basically everything that happens to you.
Yeah.
You're just there to power through. You have to be the provider, which is basically what swings with it. And if you like think of the age that our grandparents grew up in, that also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, they had no time to think about different things like
Exactly.
like after World War II, they had to build up the Germany. They had to be like straightforward, not giving anything about emotions, like just building things up, not crying. Get your ass together, yeah.
Exactly. And I think this is also important to realize that those people don't have the opinion that they have because they, I don't know, want to be in a specific way. That's just what they learned in the time they were alive. And it makes sense in that time. Like when you're in the middle of war, you cannot start thinking about, okay, what the hell? How am
I feeling today? Like,
exactly.
Bullets right above your head, and how am I feeling today? It makes me pretty sad. No, you just got no time for that. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. You suppress everything that's not helping you to survive. However, times have changed. Hopefully, we're kind of a bit of in a split point right now, but let's just assume we're staying peaceful for a couple more years. Ideally, a couple more 100 years, and our definition of manliness has changed. When did you like first notice that it has changed, or how your view on it has changed?
That's an interesting question. Honestly, I think it all has changed after school. Like in school, you just were like fooling around, doing stuff which are kids doing, like having some fights and being manly and testing out your limits and stuff. And after that, and with the internet, I just learned that there is more than just this kind of manliness, I'd say. More than this kind of manliness. It's more which defines manliness. Yeah. So I just opened myself. I just educated myself. I just talked to a lot of friends. I gotta say, all my friends were like always pretty open about that topic, and they weren't like pushing people in this stereotypical manly stuff like Doni, for example, a friend of ours. You could always just show your emotions. My peer group just knew that it's important to talk about the really important topics in life, like what keeps you down, what is bringing you emotional to a better level, and so on and so forth. And in this time, my perception to manliness just changed because I knew, okay, I'm still a man, even though I'm talking about my emotions. Yeah. And I just realized that most people which I talk to are like this. They want to talk about their emotions. They just suppressed it. So when you get into a safe space with other men and you start talking about the emotions and the things that really care, they actually open up, and mostly they're pretty happy that they're able to talk about those stuff. Because in the most peer groups, like when you grow up in Schwabeländle, in Swabian, there are a lot of really, really, really small villages. Yeah. And in those small villages, the people are like stuck in the 1980s. They're like, men can't cry. Men have to be always strong and stuff. Yeah. They're not as open as people in the bigger cities, I'd say. And when you talk to those people, they're always happy to share their opinion, actually.
Absolutely. I've made similar experiences, like growing up in a Swabian village. So this is also where our experience is kind of connected, anyways. I mean, in Swabian, there's a thing that we call Dorfhäge, and that is basically the strongest and toughest guy in the village. You know, that's just a standing term in Swabian. There's this guy. That's kind of crazy. I think it boils down to being able to show vulnerabilities. So to show that you are vulnerable. You're not that cold-hearted guy that doesn't give a shit about anything. You actually have feelings, and you can be hurt, and you can talk about it. And that's what's kind of one of the most defining factors all of a sudden.
Mm.
I think for me it changed like during the mid of college. Like when I got into college, I still was very much about the we're being manly. I don't wear a jacket outside because I'm way too manly to freeze. That kind of vibe. At some point that somehow changed. And I don't know if it was like I mean it was probably also just through that really good group of friends that I could connect to, that I could talk to, and we could literally just talk about anything, whatever affected us, and be there for each other. And the problem with that is that it's not generalizable, right? You cannot really say, okay, everyone will find that group of friends that they talk to. But at the same time, making that step from just suppressing your emotions to actually recognizing them and dealing with them is a big one that you need to do for your own good.
Well, I guess it's because of insecurities. Because like everybody should talk about how they feel and how they're vulnerable sometimes and stuff. But if you're not in that peer group, if you don't have the friends we share, for example, I'd imagine those people like being emotional because they're human, so they cry sometimes, which is a human thing. But they'd never share it with their peer group because they're like too scared to be called like a woman. It's really just dumb things, yeah. Just you're a woman, stop crying, and so on and so forth. And in my opinion, if they would start to like open themselves, talk about their emotions, everybody in every peer group would be kind of happy to share their experience, but nobody just makes the first step to do so. Like I just described in the peer group in the small village that I grew up, the same friend we shared like opened all this topic. Like he was the one who said, it's okay, you can talk about how you feel, and he honestly, which is the point too, he honestly just asked people how they feel, not like, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great, even though I'm doing pretty shitty. If everybody would be just a little bit more open about themselves, I guess perspectives of manliness would change a bit. Like break those chains of the thing your grandma just said before. A Native American doesn't cry. Yeah. If you would break those chains, people would talk a lot about manliness.
There's two things I want to comment on. Arguably, like this has been quite some time ago, and arguably when your biggest value is to be the manliest man of all times, being called a woman was considered a like demeaning, right? Was considered to be taken in a bad way. Arguably, there's nothing bad about being a woman or having classically, I don't know, female values attached to yourself. It's just like a thing that happened back then. So just want to put a small disclaimer on that. Second thing is, I still think you shouldn't generally be open to everyone. Because after all, I mean, it's called vulnerability for a reason. And if you share with the wrong people, that's arguably dangerous.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I meant talking to your peer group. Like you should have a peer group on which you can rely on. That's what I just stated as a fact. So you should open to your peer group. Sure, you should not open to your boss and be like, "Oh, damn, my cat just died, and I'm so sad." And
well, I guess you could still do that, but that's a solid enough reason for your boss.
Okay, you can tell that to your boss, but like, I'm having like sexual difficulties. You shouldn't tell that to your boss. Obviously, you should like talk this to your peer group. Yeah. And the thing you just said before, I just wanted to have a little throwback to the documentary you just looked. The one day where this guy said, "I like cooking. and I'm not a woman because cooking is basically chemistry, so it's manly, it's hard. This just reminded me of that. I just wanted to have a little throwback to that.
That was absolutely crazy. I don't know. So I think the problem starts to grow, though, the moment you don't have a peer group. Because having a peer group that you can actually connect to is not, it's not a given. Not everyone has that.
Yeah.
And especially when you grow up in a tiny village, the amount of people you can potentially connect to is rather small. And if you happen to not like them, or happen to have nothing in common with them, it's getting even tougher.
Well, sure, that's true. Yeah. You can change your, you will always be the man in the village, like every man will behave like, but I'd say even though every man in a small village will behave the same, they will drink beer in the evening, they will sit at a pub, talk about how their woman treats them badly and like football stuff and so on and so forth, they could still connect with if they really wanted to open themselves and educate themselves. It's there's still the internet. Like if you're feeling bad because you're feeling vulnerable and you talk to yourself and tell yourself, hey, you need to man up, you could still potentially go into the internet and talk to people and see that manliness is not just biting and fighting for everything. You could come to Twitch, for example, into Deevoz chat. I'd say the perspective to manliness in Deevoz chat is like a really open thing. Even Jimmy Coolman, which is the manliest person in Deevoz chat, sometimes isn't that manly, I guess, and has vulnerabilities and emotions.
Of course. You mentioned another interesting thing that I also remember, that manliness is a lot tied to drinking alcohol. And just not just a bit alcohol, but like rough amounts. And if you couldn't drink an entire bottle of vodka, you're basically a baby. Like, I remember things like that. And I find it crazy that basically, I mean, after all, it's just taking drugs is so connected to manliness. Like, how much can you take before you drop?
That's actually an interesting point, because when you think about the times you just drank a whole bottle of vodka, like we all did because we're manly men from small villages. All of a sudden, people sometimes just changed and started crying and talking, like being honest and stuff, and oh, I'm feeling so bad, and like they opened themselves when they started drinking alcohol, which is arguably a thing of a coping mechanism to like drink and having fun, and all of a sudden your brain just shuts down the protection mechanism of being manliness to start to talk about your emotions. That's the thing I've experienced. I don't know how you experienced that.
We have a comment here. That's a very juvenile understanding of manliness. It might be that your perspective changed with age, not the societal definition itself. I know plenty older guys, like in their 50s and 60s, that still think the amount of alcohol determines how manly you are. So maybe, of course, it is like a personal development. It's also a thing that you learn with age. But I know enough people that still like just drink as much alcohol as they can, and that's their means of being manly.
Yeah, I'd arguably would take the opposite point, because like I stopped drinking alcohol for about a half a year now, and every time I'm at parties with like peer groups in my age, they're like, "Oh, you don't drink alcohol? That's okay." Like, "Oh, you're the driver, all right." And every time I'm with older people from small villages.
Yeah.
They say, oh, why don't you drink alcohol? Come on, just drink a little Radler. This, like, no, I'm not drinking alcohol anymore, even though it's just a Radler. Yes, no. Like it's still in their brains, even if they're 50. They connect manliness with alcohol.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Or even I've also heard comments like, "Oh, you have such a big beard, you must drink a lot." Like, I've heard these things, and it's just crazy to me how much that is connected, and how much like my own perception changed. Like I personally drink like, I don't know, once a month, and then it's like a glass of whiskey or something. Mostly because I enjoy it. But honestly, thinking about it today, I don't even know if I would have started enjoying whiskey without my perception of manliness. Because when I began drinking whiskey, I did not enjoy it. But I think this is the manliest drink you can drink. There's nothing more manly than drinking whiskey. Yes. So I got used to drinking whiskey, but and now I really enjoy it. But still,
yeah. There's this video on YouTube. A friend showed me the manliest man in the world. That's just a old dude sitting there with a white beard, smoking a cigar and drinking a whiskey for like 3 hours. Nothing else, just that. And that's like really manly. Yeah, drinking whiskey is pretty manly. Yeah, and I just had to laugh at Radler is not alcohol.
Yeah.
That's really a typical saying in southern Germany.
It certainly is. I had a boss when I was a teenager that determined a show of manliness was to shake hands with as much gripping force as possible. I also know that, absolutely. I knew people that did that.
Yeah, but yeah, that's right. My uncle just still does it. He like nearly breaks my hand when he shakes my hand, but and my granddad always said when somebody didn't have a firm handshake, he said that's a fish flosse. Like I don't know how to translate
it. A fish fin, basically.
A fish fin, yeah. You're just grabbing a fish fin. He can't be a real man because he's just given a fish fin.
So I do enjoy a firm handshake over a weak one. I have to say.
Okay.
but we're getting too far apart. So another interesting aspect that changed the whole thing is technology. And Festus made a point earlier that technology exacerbates the problem of a lack of a peer group. But at the same time, it offers more options to find peers that are not close to you. So how would you see that?
That's true. The internet is always just could be dangerous. Is a like if you are lonely in your small village and you try to connect to other people and you head into the internet, you open your browser and you go to certain things. Like you could go into the Twitch chat, talk to people, like evolve a peer group which is like honest and stuff, and like in your chat. But you could also open up 4chan, becoming some kind of the incels you just watched, which is a dangerous thing. You could tell I want to be a Sigma male now because I saw it on the internet. I saw the Sigma male like cooking and stuff and being ultra alpha and stuff. But you could also get a good peer group. That's some kind of luck. I'd say it's luck where you head to. Like you just said before, you have to be lucky to have a peer group like we do have. Like where you can be. Where the definition of manliness differs from the others.
Yeah.
And but you could also be unlucky and head right into the small Swabian village in the internet, which is called 4chan. So you just see all those Sigma males and stuff, and you get inspired by that, and you just get more and more insecure. And I'd go as far to say you'd go mentally unstable sometimes. You're like depressed and when you can't show your emotions and you're always just suppressing it, that can't be good for your mental.
I would generally agree that 4chan is definitely not a healthy place to be at, despite the original idea that having a name doesn't add anything to the conversation. So that's like one of the reasons why everyone is anon on 4chan, so no one has like a real name there, and you would think that would lead to better conversations. However, the opposite is the case. Like it's usually just a rant of toxicity and values that if you attach them to yourself can actually hurt your real world experience.
Yeah, that's true. And there are like always trolls in the internet. When you get into the internet, you need to learn about trolling and how people behave on the internet, even though you might go onto 4chan. I've been there too, like searching for some nice wallpapers and stuff, like having a sunset and something, and suddenly you see, I don't know, really brutal stuff, and I didn't want to see that, because trolls just post the most brutal stuff there is out there.
Yeah.
And that's a thing you need to learn when you go into the internet. Yeah, like on 4chan.
And unfortunately, no one teaches you that.
Yeah, nobody in school, nobody teaches you that there are trolls out there which are just in the internet to make fun of really bad stuff. Yeah.
To make your day miserable.
Yeah.
That's roughly the goal. I mean, I've seen some terrible things way too young in my life because I discovered the internet, and I discovered 4chan surprisingly quickly, I have to say. And that somehow changes your perception of the world for worse usually. I think there's another aspect to the technology thing, because let's say given you have good relationships over the internet, you have found like a peer group there that you can talk to, that you have like a good connection to. What is your motivation to still go out and try to make friends otherwise? And this is something I do a lot myself, because I cannot be arsed to go to, I don't know, the local supermarket and start talking to people, trying to make friends, because it just feels awkward to me.
And maybe just the internet. You can't evolve. Not talking about you, but talking about every generic someone. You lack of involving social skills when you're just staying on the internet. That's true. But like you just said, that's interesting, because if you'd ask our grandparents, they totally have no problem with talking to people at the supermarket. Like if you ever been to a supermarket and you're just driving your car and thinking, I need to remember the butter, and you stay at the cashier, and suddenly an old woman just turns around and, hey, how's your day going? Like, the older people are, in that case, much more social than we are, and arguably you could say that's because of the internet. Yeah, that's just the Festus from the chat just mentioned, like deep relationships take a lot of time and effort, which is something modern technology pulls us away from.
Yeah.
I'd like say that's true. Yeah,
certainly. And I would say the best friends I have are still the ones that I've actually met in real life.
Yeah.
And we're standing in front of a bigger problem here, because getting to know people in real life becomes harder and harder. Like even if we assume that we could talk to someone in the supermarket, the amount of people I meet in the supermarket that I even have interest in talking to is relatively low. Like just by, let's say I want to talk to someone that is roughly in the same age, plus minus 10 years. It's
because there are no people in your age in the supermarket.
Yeah, roughly, yes. There's basically only old people.
Yeah. Good, you arguably could hang around with old people.
Of course I can, but at the same time, I wish to talk to someone that is in the same, or like in a similar situation in life. I think that it's easier to relate to that, and especially since COVID hit, basically everything got shut down. So where do you actually still meet people?
That's sure. Like but I guess we don't differ there, because I know some people in my age which go to like bigger cities, sit into a coffee and talk to people. That's something I never do.
Yeah,
like just sitting into a coffee talking to people is something I don't want to do. But At the same time, I never had problems with finding like friends when we had to be in a group, like at work or something. I always had a quick relationship to people, and to get around to back to the topic. I think that's because that's one of the aspects, because I find friends that easily in the groups we have to be together, is partially because of the definition of manliness. Like, because I'm the type of guy who likes talking about emotions rather than the weather.
Yeah.
Like, if
Yeah.
you're at work, I found some great friends at work which are in my age, and if you start talking to them, and you're not just talking about work, you're just talking about private things and not the weather, and you start talking about the relationship to their girlfriends and really get in touch, you'll easily find a peer group on which you can rely on, in my opinion.
I find it hard to agree on that easily. Because
Okay.
arguably you are working in a social context.
Okay. Yeah.
So the people you meet at work are built different than if you would, for example, work in a bank or
built different.
or in IT or whatever. Even though I
social
believe,
caseworker.
yeah, exactly. And I believe IT is probably not even that different. But I find it very hard to give the advice to just share what you experience with people that you meet, for example, at work. Because that can also backfire, especially if you don't really have that idea or filter of how much is fine and how much is oversharing. And as Fester said, like the way we interact on the internet tends, like we don't really get the feedback if we overshare, and then we don't adapt our actions. So finding out when we overshare, and that's the thing that we need to learn too.
Yeah, that's okay. That's like a social skill you need to develop.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah, you need to. You can't just go to your colleague and tell him, "Hey, how are you?" I don't know how, like how are you doing things in bed or something like that. You know, some private stuff. You need to touch. You need to take one step at a time and just build up a relationship in a normal way. Yeah.
Certainly. Another thing that I noticed, to go a bit back on the manliness topic, is that my reaction to watching movies and series has changed. Like I catch myself crying watching some season finales of some random series on Netflix. I mean, not random, but and this is so weird to me, because all of a sudden I catch myself crying, and I have basically not cried in the last 20 years. Well, it's been a bit from now, but you get what I'm saying. And all of a sudden I'm reacting emotional to seeing something on the TV which just hasn't happened before. It's a weird change.
How come so?
If I would know that, I'd tell you. For example, like the weirdest thing I've cried to lately is like I've watched, I don't know, I think it was the first or the second season of The Witcher. Slight spoiler maybe. In the end you see basically Geralt training Ciri. And I started crying. I'm like, fucking hell, what is that? Is that some like evolutional hormones of deadliness coming out of me? What the hell is going on? And I just started crying, and like I couldn't stop. It was weird. Right? And arguably, like I'm not blaming myself for doing so. I'm just noticing it and being like, yo, I did not expect that happening at all.
That's actually, yeah, I'd experience the same things, I'd say. But as well as you just said, like when Geralt was training Ciri, that's not like a really sad thing to do, but you'd suddenly start crying about these. It's sometimes I just scroll on TikTok and I see, like, I don't know, a super manly man telling, hey, it's okay to be emotional. You cry sometimes. You don't need to be that man. And I just look at it and I start crying about it because I feel touched by it. I gotta admit, I didn't cry. I don't cry a lot, like you just said. Like 20 years, I didn't cry and stuff. But all of a sudden, videos start catching me too. Like, I'm not the. Some people say I'm not the emotional type of guy. I'm more in my brain than in my heart. But those kind of videos sometimes like catch me too, get some tears rolling. And I gotta admit that a thing too, which hasn't changed, is that I don't cry in front of my girlfriend or in front of other people. That's like she's my girlfriend is really sad about it because she says, "Hey, there's a sad scene we're seeing here. Don't you want to cry? I want to see you cry. Just be emotional and stuff." But I can't open up myself to cry in front of my girlfriend.
Don't take that out of context. I want to see you cry.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Oftentimes, like it was for me like that for a long time too. But at some point, that kind of changed, at least with my girlfriend. Funny enough. I don't know. I feel like I'm making more connections to how I'm actually feeling about things, and less on suppressing. And we also found out since a long time that if you constantly just suppress emotions, that's gonna bite you in the ass after some years.
Sure. Would you say it's because of you are able to open up to those kind of emotions because you're streaming? That's because you have that community of people which are sharing all those kind of stuff, like how they feel, and how could there be a correlation between streaming and being more emotional at seeing Geralt training Ciri?
I've honestly never thought about it. I have doubts. Like I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that's the reason, but I could be wrong. Like I've not really given this thought too much thought.
Okay.
Time.
Because I think if you stay in a group which is talking about this stuff and being not that manly, as you might say, just changes the way you behave. Like if you translate it to another example, just if you're in a peer group of people who are talking about like philosophical things and how is life, what is life, and how are we treating it, and where do we go after we die, and so on and so forth. You start training your brain, and you start making yourself thoughts up about that. But if you're in a small Swabian village, they will never ask you things like that. They will ask you if you saw the Bayern game, and you will become kind of, I don't want to say, numb to those kind of topics which are important. And if you stay in like the Twitch chat, that's why I asked the question. If you are in the Twitch chat where our peer groups, like people, not peer groups, like people in the internet who are more emotional, you might turn more emotional time to.
Yeah. Potentially. If you could like tell your younger self something in that matter, what would that be?
Honestly, I'd tell my younger self, because when I was younger, I had a lot of emotions going myself, and I kind of have been sad pretty often because I've been bullied in school, and I tell my younger self to open up to someone, like to not bite, to just open up, to be more emotional, to maybe hang around with women in my class, talk to them, not just suppressing everything. crying alone and stuff. Just open up yourself. People will be happy about when you start talking about your emotions. Some people. I'm just always like we talked before. You can talk to your bully like, "Hey, I'm really sad because you're bullying me," because that will arguably just
make it worse.
encourage him to bully you even more.
Yeah.
But I tell myself, it's okay. You're okay. The world is okay, and it's okay to cry, to be emotional, and to be not as manly as you might think you have to.
Yeah. It's good. I've also remembered like the first time I got confronted with the idea of not being manly. I was like a teenager back then, and as teenagers are, I was quite dumb. I got repulsed by the idea that to not be manly. Like I found it a very weak idea for a man to cry. Like I was like basically so far on the side of that traditional idea of being masculine that I got repulsed by the idea that someone would not be manly and willingly so. So it's kind of a crazy route I took from that point to the point where I am today.
Okay. So what would you tell your younger self?
Well, I guess I would tell him to stick to the one rule that I've set for myself later on, is that's just to try to never judge. Because after all, that is helping in nearly every life scenario. Like, don't judge. You can always just like either talk about it or sometimes just notice something and it's okay. Try to just judge less, because judging in the end won't help anyone. And I'm trying to see that for a good part as a life principle. Even though I might fail at it still.
Yeah, everybody fails at it. Like judging people, putting people into categories is in the human nature. I mean, you studied psychology, you know it.
Yeah,
like it's in the human nature to put people into like categories and stuff. But you, as you said, you just could make yourself up to the idea that you're judging and you need to rethink about how you judge people and stop doing it.
Exactly. And that also, like, the idea of being manly doesn't put you above anyone. Like, if you like, the thing is, if you choose these values for yourself and you think those are good values for you, I am not telling anyone to be in a specific way. That's fine, but that doesn't make you better than anyone else. Like, just getting reminded of the idea that, like, you know, everyone's just a small piece of dust in the universe. Which is something no teenager ever will believe, because teenagers think they're fucking invincible. They're the hot shit of the planet. Like, that's also normal for a teenager, and I think it's also kind of okay to think that as a teenager, just because that's how teenagers are. You are usually strongly confident in your ability to conquer the world.
Well, and I have to say, at 13, I don't want to, like, elderly dude tell me, you're just a small piece in the universe. You will die sometime. You're just... At 13, I don't want to hear that stuff. I want to be invincible.
Of course. So yeah, that's probably not a good thing to teach to my 13-year-old self. But still,
you will die sometimes. Be prepared to be dead.
better already rent a place at the graveyard. They're costly. I don't know. And now there's also a new wave of, in quotation marks, toxic masculinity that spreads over social media, where people basically try to resupply these I'll call it traditional values. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I got, you maybe pretty controversial thoughts about it. It's not that controversial, actually, if you think about it. Great philosophers like Zizek said the same. Like, when you got one movement, like the extreme left movement, which is telling people that they need to do certain things, they always pushing the opposite side. Like, it's okay to and don't get me wrong, it's okay to wear skirts as a man. Like, it's okay to wear makeup. I even if you search hard enough, you'll find a picture of me in the internet wearing a dress and high heels. And that's totally okay. But we need to stop categorizing these kind of stuff. I already mentioned it in your chat. We, like Zizek said, I don't know if you watched it. Like, if I in the LGBTQIA plus, I'd decide to be the plus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. I guess this all comes from. If you start talking, don't talk about it. Just be it. Just be yourself. Just accept everyone. Just look at this man wearing a skirt. Yeah, I had to cry. I had to cry in front of my just a small other thing. I had to cry at RuPaul's Drag Race when Evie Oddly just came in because it was so artsy. I don't know if you know that show.
I know it exists. I never watched it.
Okay, it's awesome. You should totally watch it.
Okay.
I think it's season 4, 3 years. Evie Oddly just came in with a like, he looked so stunning and stuff, and you need to accept it and just watch people and accept them and realize that they're beautiful people, not without labeling. Just taking them as they are.
Yeah.
And if you start pushing in the things that you need to label them and blah 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 and so on and so forth, you always start pushing the other direction. Like this Tate, this bald-headed, I don't know his name anymore. You're pushing those people because they're telling you, no, you don't have to wear skirts. It's not manly. You need to be manly now and always smoke a cigar like 20 centimeters long and be this kind of dude. I think it's problematic that they're pushing into this way. Sure, that's totally problematic that they're pushing the idea of don't show your emotions, just go hustle, get money, get women, and so on and so forth. That's problematic. I don't know. Just a small disclaimer: if you might be confused about what I'm talking, as well as Mari, as well as Deevoz, I do suffer from ADD, so. I might sometimes just talk stuff and without a connection, maybe.
It's all good. I think people are used to it at that point. I tend to do that a lot too, stopping in the middle of a sentence to tell an entirely different story. That just happens. I think the most dangerous thing about Tate, or like in general the new masculinity movement, I want to call it, is that it usually reaches people that had bad experiences. Those bad experiences form data in their head, and they form some kind of, perception of the world on that. And then they find people on the internet which have the exact same perception on the world, and they start to believe this is the only true perception of the world, while adding really dangerous belief or mindsets to it. Like, for example, to quote him here, not my opinion, I'm quoting, disclaimer, depression is not real, you sometimes just feel a little bit bad. Yeah. Like shit like that is massively harmful and massively dangerous, because people don't suicide because they feel a little bit bad today. That's not what's going on.
Yeah. True.
Also, there's literally biomarkers for that. You can literally, measure that. Same for trauma, by the way. You can do neuroscans and you can see a trauma reaction. We have that.
Yeah.
Like, we have the medical knowledge. It's not just psychologists believing something. There is medicine backing it up.
Yeah, like a lack of serotonin. You can't just manly up a lack of serotonin.
Exactly.
Like, that's not possible. You're just not feeling a little bit bad. Your brain doesn't arguably doesn't work right as it should be. It doesn't produce as much serotonin as it should. Yeah.
Also, I see there's some interest in the how to gain friends question. And I believe, like, I generally believe that there is someone for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's someone you can connect to and that you really can vibe with in a very good way. However, that is always a question of sample size. And that also means you have to, like, get to meet many people
Mm-hmm.
to find the person, and also, like, stay open to that they might actually be someone that you would like to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you're trying to force it, it's not going to work.
That's true. Yeah. If you start not being yourself,
Yeah.
if you're trying to force some ideal of a person, you will not gain any friends. Yeah.
And there's like one rule that, especially when you like get to know a new group, there's one rule from 4chan that actually holds true. It was like lurk before you ride. In IRL, that is try to catch the vibe of a group.
Yeah.
And even that, I'm not saying you should change the way you would behave. Like maybe a bit. Just try to find out what vibe the group has before you start talking too much. Like, of course, you're going to say hi and all that. Like, just have regular conversations. But before you basically take the stage in a way, try to find out how the vibe of that group is.
Mm.
And arguably, usually in a group, no one takes the stage. But I think you get the picture I'm painting here. It's like usually in a group, someone talks and the others listen.
Yeah.
That's how conversations work, yeah.
Yeah, not just the vibe of the group. You could, if you're training it hardly enough, you sometimes get to know the roles they're taking in the groups. Like there are always the same roles in the group. There's the speaker and so on and so forth, who's like everybody's listening to. If you lean back and watch who has which role, it will be much easier to fit into those groups. The vibe and the roles the people just take.
Also, you can learn a lot about how social interaction is expected in a group if you do that.
Mm.
Like bit of a slightly funny backstory to that. I've been watching Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. I don't know if you guys have seen it. So, for example, there's one episode where a girl tries to fit into a group, and she absolutely is unable to catch that drift, and she doesn't fit. I'm not going to spoil her more in case anyone wants to still watch it. And I think that was a perfect display of how someone was absolutely unable to catch the vibe of a group.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably that's a series and it's not real, but usually things that happen in shows are at least inspired by real life activities.
Mm-hmm. It's true. I mean, you could just watch The Office.
Yeah, also good.
Because people are in this show are portrayed like really over the top, and you could watch it, turn it a bit down, and you just have your office. People are like that. The roles they take. Yeah. And I just wanted to, because I just saw it in chat, I just wanted to thank Festus for complimenting on my Zizek impression.
Yeah, I think that might be also an important thing to add, that the way you spoke was a Zizek impression and not you making fun of LGBTQAA+.
No, yeah.
Because if people don't know Zizek, but now I thought we should maybe mention that.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I said it before, but Zizek is talking in a really strange way.
Okay, all good. So another thing that I've heard that helped someone is basically drive to a different city and go to a cafe there or a restaurant and try to make friends there. Because thing is, if you do it in your own city, people might recognize you. So that might be holding you back. If you drive to a different city and just experiment with it, what's the worst thing that happens? Some random stranger thinks you're weird. So what? You're never going to meet them again. Try, fail, repeat. Try, fail, repeat. And after all, you will also learn some social skills there. You will learn by the reaction that people have if something you said is a good thing to say or a bad thing to say to start up a conversation or to have a conversation.
That's true, yeah. But arguably, it's pretty hard to just drive into a bigger city
Yeah, of course.
and with a goal to talk to people and find friends. That's like we just talked before. You can't push it. Like you can't drive into a bigger city, sit into a coffee, and like you'll be my friend now.
Of course not, no, but you can start talking to people, and that is what you can force. You can force talking to people.
Yeah, that's true.
You can waddle up to someone sitting in a cafe and saying, "Hey, my name is, how are you? I'm new here, I wanna get to meet some people. What can you tell me?" And then they're like, "Yo, leave me alone." And then you waddle away and try the next desk.
Okay, but that's I'd say that's a hard thing to do. You could start going into the gym or something like hobbies, where you at least got one point to share with those people. Like you got an icebreaker if you go into the gym and like, oh, you're lifting that weight. I don't know what people talk about in the gym. Obviously, I don't go into the gym, as you might see. But if you're like into fishing or playing video game stuff, and you just head outside and go into, for example, in the bigger cities, there are some esport groups. You just head in there, and you'll find people which are interested in esports, gaming and stuff, and you are able to get into a quick conversation because you share at least one topic. You could have an icebreaker on.
Yeah. Also, we got the addition on chat. What about social anxiety? It's hard in real life. Arguably, social anxiety is like a step up from the situation I was talking about. But also, you can start by taking baby steps. The problem with anxiety is if you just never do the thing that causes the anxiety will get worse. Even though I'm not a huge fan of going like pure exposition or whatever, but you are afraid that something happens when you do something. If you never do the thing, that fear will grow bigger and bigger and bigger because it becomes more ominous. It loses basically the connection to the real event because it's a giant block in your head. So so it doesn't help to just avoid it entirely, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if you know you're a little bit socially awkward and if struggling with anxiety, and it's not. I just want to state that if you're, it's not a mental disease yet. I don't know how to yeah, you know what I mean. It's not like diagnosed yet. If it just starts, you could expose yourself to fight against it. But if it's already diagnosed, you surely get into therapy and
hopefully.
And do it with a therapist. Expose yourself with a therapist because he will do the right thing to.
Exactly. So yeah, unfortunately, neither the podcast nor my streams in general can make up for mental health treatment. I'm very open to talk about topics, but I cannot replace that at all.
Yeah, you should, and you should always. That's true. Yeah, you should go into therapy if you have a broken, if you have struggling with mentally issues. That's a thing. I just wanted to say to the example you've just mentioned before with the Tate, like you just need to man up. If you're a little bit sad, you're not depressed. You'd never say this to someone who has like a broken arm. Oh, just stretch it. Just use your broken arm. You can't do it.
Just use it, you wimp.
Yeah.
You mean broken arm? Broken makes it stronger.
Yeah. It can't broke there anymore.
Exactly.
If it's once broken at that spot can't break anymore. Just
break
man up.
More. Yeah, exactly.
Break your whole arm.
So this is also something that's very different in the US already, which is like one of the few good things about the US. It is way more common to just go to a therapist there. Like they have online platforms that offer kinda wide support for everyone. Also some that are basically free of charge. It's a lot different in Europe. Europe seems a little bit more medieval in that manner.
Especially I'd say Germany, because like if you remember COVID coming up, and the statistics show that mentally diseases like which is growing and growing and growing, the people get more depressed and socially anxious and stuff. Our health minister just released an app and said, hey, you just need to use that app to feel better. Or the best thing, I'm not kidding you, he just said, maybe you just sit on the sofa at the evening and have 2 to 3 beers and everything's all right again. Like, that's the perspective of the health minister and at the start of Corona and here in Germany. And that's the thing which has to change in society. Like Böhmermann, or famous German comedian and journalist, already showed that we have a lot of difficulties here in Germany, which from mental health.
Yeah. I think I've touched on that on the first episode of the podcast. We have a lot of difficulties in Germany. First of all, our health ministers tend to be incompetent, all of them, unfortunately. Half of them have no sort of education that just would even justify the position they're in. And unfortunately, their decisions reflect on that massively. Like as you said, that's the traditional value of how to feel better. Sit on the sofa, drink a couple of beers, and maybe watch a Tatort, which is, a German crime show. On the comment of Germany is much better in mental health. I don't know how bad it is in Norway, in your case. However, in Germany, you have at least a waiting time of 6 months, unless you're suicidal. Then you get into treatment immediately. But 6 months is the absolute minimum, unless you want to pay yourself, then it's faster. So we have a bit of a two-class society in Germany.
And even if you're paying, doesn't mean that you got a psychologist, a master of arts. You maybe just get a Heilpraktiker.
Yeah.
Which you pay, which isn't like, and it's the same thing. Like, you can study for 5 years and have the same thing for like just taking one test. But they're evenly considered here in Germany. Yeah. You should. I don't know. Yeah, 6 months waiting time is much too less. Mainly because the Krankenkasse, the health insurance, doesn't pay more therapy spots here in Germany, and they need to pay more therapy spots. That's just how it is. Because in the end, if you just want to talk about economics, people who are waiting 6 months for the therapy to get like a year of treatment in therapy are 1.5 years not making cash for the state. Yeah. If they could get faster into therapy, they could. It would be better for everything, for the whole Volksökonomie, economics, for the whole economics. Country, if they just would be treated much
quicker. Certainly.
Yeah.
I think it would only have advantages. All right. Do you have any closing thoughts on the topic?
Actually, closing thoughts. No, I could talk about. I just could keep talking for hours now. I just run wild now. But
we can do an episode 2 of this. This is not a problem.
I sure be into it. Yeah.
All right.
But I don't have any closing thoughts.
All right, perfect. So yeah, you mentioned it earlier. You have a TikTok channel that people can follow. I'll put it in the show notes. It's at Jimmy_the_Coolman, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And you know where to find me if you're already on my YouTube channel or my Spotify, I guess. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a beautiful day. And thank you. Bye-bye.